welcome you all to The Gateway.
The Gateway is a video podcast directed and hosted by staff members of Somerset Community College's student newspaper, The Bridge.
This is The Gateway.
Hello, SEC, and welcome back to The Gateway. I'm your host, Eli Parker.
I'm Miguel Sanabria.
And with us today is Mr. John Perkins, or as he's more famously known as, Johnny B. He's here with us today. How are you today, sir?
Doing fine. Nice to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
We appreciate you being here very much. So just to, right off the bat, give us just like a synopsis of who John Perkins is.
John Perkins was born in 1949 right across the street from Slim's Chicken, which is 219 Adams Street. I'm the oldest of 6 kids. It was 7. We lost a sister last year.
Oh.
My dad passed away in '82. My mom passed away February the 4th of last year. And been in Somerset all my life except for college and the service. I've seen it go from a 2-lane road all the way to a 4-lane, and I've just seen it grow in leaps and bounds. I've been fortunate enough, my family's been fortunate enough to grow up here and live here because of the people in the community. It's a nice community. Went to an all-black school my first 8 years, Dunbar Elementary School. Then I ended up going to Somerset High, played all kind of sports. Ended up going to Eastern Kentucky University on a baseball scholarship. Went for the wrong reasons and flunked my way out within 3 semesters.
It happens.
Yeah.
Setbacks happen.
Played on the first basketball team right here at Somerset Community College when it had 1 building. Somerset has shaped me. I'm married with 4 children. Our son John runs the operation. Got a daughter, Beverly, that works at a Bluegrass assisted living. Daughter Kathy, that's health and wellness coordinator for the city. And our daughter Stacy is a postal worker in Lexington. Have 7 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren.
Wonderful.
And it's just an honor to be here. Somerset Community College played an important role in my life in that it gave me the opportunity to get education after I left Eastern and after I'd been in the service. Spent 3 years, 8 months, 12 days in the Air Force.
That's all we do. Get it done.
Counting each day, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a Vietnam veteran.
Oh,
and,
thank you very much, sir.
Appreciate it. And like I say again, I'm just happy to be here. God's been good to me. I belong to the Davis Chapel AME Church. And that's about all in a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
Well, thank you so much for your service as well. You know, you may not know I'm a veteran myself. And I have family that were also Vietnam veterans. So
their service and your service.
Definitely, I'm excited to have you here. Thank you for taking your time to spend with us. And I just have a few questions for you. So what was your journey like going from federal employee and eventual postmaster to entrepreneur?
You know, when I got out of the service in '73, the guy that was postmaster here, Mr. John Tohill, had asked me when I graduated high school. He was my Babe Ruth coach in baseball. He said, "You want a job with the post office?" This was in 1967. And I laughed at him and said, who wants to be a mailman? I was going to be the next Willie Mays.
Right.
So I ended up going to school. Didn't work out. We had a daughter, and I got my greetings. Back then, they drafted you. And had the opportunity to get out of it because I was in school here. And I told my wife, I said, it might be a good opportunity. So we ended up going to the service because your family's always involved. And through my period in the service, when I got ready to get out, they had a class called Project Transition. You could study to be a meat cutter, postal worker, electrician, blah, blah, blah. And for some reason, I went to the postal class, tested, passed my test, and when I came home, I went to the post office, and the guy was still postmaster there, and he said, we hadn't hired anybody here in 6 years, but I've got a friend in Lexington. So I went to Lexington and started as a clerk making $2.48, 49 an hour. And I remember telling my wife, Nellie, that if we can make $4 an hour, we'll live like kings. You know, we'll kill them. And by the way, Nellie and I have been married, it'd be 54 years in July.
Oh.
And we grew up 2 houses down from each other. I knew her before she knew who she was. I'm 2 years older. But she's the mother of our children, and I mean, she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. But anyway, to make a long story short, I worked in Lexington for about 1.5 years and transferred back here, back to Somerset. Started out as a clerk carrier, and back then we didn't have a lot of folks, and the Somerset Post Office is a sectional center. It processes mail for 26 offices in the prefixes of 425, which is Somerset, Pulaski County, 426, which is Wayne County, Russell County, Wayne County, McQuarrie County. But anyway, process mail for 26 of those offices. And back then, every little community had a post office. So since we were short, myself and another lady, I think we worked about 118 days in a row without getting a day off.
Wow.
And my schedule, and this is for the young folks in college here, I want to make an impression on them. My schedule then was to go in at midnight, work until about 6 o'clock when we got the trucks out, come home, eat breakfast, wash up, whatever, go back in about 10:30, 11 o'clock, carry an auxiliary route till about 1:30 or 2, come back home, go back in at 4 o'clock in the evening, and work until 8, getting the trucks out that brought the mail into our office to be processed. Go home, and then I'd go back in at midnight. And that's just what you did. Didn't complain or anything, glad to have a job. But anyway, to make a long story short, I started doing that. And the postmaster there, we were just implementing a new process to put boxes in. You see the little boxes that are square, and they've got their own compartments that you see in the rural area.
Yeah.
Well, the postmaster was from Whitesburg, Kentucky, and he didn't know a lot of folks around here, and I did. And he told me, he said, if you go out and help us implement these boxes, get them in, I'll give you a promotion. So I went door to door all over Somerset, and we got them put in, and he was supposed to have promoted me, but he didn't. He promoted somebody else.
Oh.
And I cursed him under my breath. But the way we were raised, our mother always taught us that anything that anybody else could do, we could do. So I stayed patient, got elected to the school board here. His wife was a teacher in Whitesburg, and this is karma. He has to come to me for her to get a job here in Somerset. Well, I couldn't really help her because we didn't have any openings, and that was the principal and the superintendent's job at the time. But anyway, we struck up a friendship, and he promoted me and stuff. And from there, as a delivery supervisor, they had a job opening coming up in Lexington to where you managed about 300-400 post offices. Well, the manager there in Lexington wanted to fire my postmaster and my supervisor. So he called me one evening, and he wanted the dirt on them. I told him, I said, you need to talk to them. I said, they're my superiors, and I'm not going to rat on them. A little bitty man. He cursed me on the phone and slammed the phone down. He's in Lexington. I go home and I tell my wife, Nellie, I'm going to get fired. Man, we got 3 babies there crying for the same bottle. And, I knew I could. But anyway, I go back in the office the next morning, and there's a message, Mr. Perkins, report to Lexington tomorrow morning. So I drive to Lexington, and I sit out in the hall at the main post office from about 8 o'clock in the morning till about 5 that evening, afraid to go to the restroom, because I didn't want to miss him. And about 5:30, he comes out, small man with a big cigar in his mouth. That's when you could smoke in the building and stuff. He said, "Are you John Perkins?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Follow me." So I go in his office, and he puts his foot up on the desk. And seemed like he looked at me for 24 hours. I mean, he just, and I'm sitting there, and he said, "Son," he said, "I appreciate your loyalty." And he said, "I need people like you." And he said, "How would you like to get a job as the post office coordinator for this whole area?" And like I say, it was almost probably around 300-400 post offices. I can't remember. And the first thing I told him, I said, "I'm not qualified." And I said, "I do myself a disservice in the Postal Service, you know, if I take the job." And he looked at me and he said, "Well, I'll get you ready." And for about the next 6 months, he ran me all over the United States, getting training and stuff. And my supervisor, immediate supervisor, had put in for the job. And he was the best supervisor I'd ever had. So I told him, I said, "Sir," I said, "my supervisor's put in for the job and I don't want to compete against him." I said, "He's better qualified." And he looked at me and he said, "Well, we'll see." So I run all over the United States, and when the job comes open, we interview. And after our interview, he said, "The job's yours." And back then, and you can equate to this, and out of most of the offices in this area, I may have been the only black person. And I told him, I said, "I don't want the job because of the color of my skin, or I don't want to be a token." And he looked at me and grinned. He said, "Don't you worry." He said, you've earned it." I leave Somerset that morning working for the postmaster. When I come back to Somerset that evening, the postmaster's working for me. And all the postmasters in this area.
Ooh.
My boss tells me, he said, "Go out and get you any kind of furniture you want. Decorate your office." My wife's good at that. So, you know, what we wanted to do is we wanted to shop locally. But we couldn't because of post office restrictions, so we had to get our furniture out of North Carolina. The first day that I'm there, well, when I come back that evening, my postmaster meets me in the lobby. He had gotten the news, and he looked at me and he said, "Congratulations, Johnny." He said, "But you can't do that job. You can't do this job. You aren't qualified." So I cursed him under my breath. "I'm going to show you." I go to my office, and the first day I'm shaking. I'm scared to death. Phone starts ringing. I've got postmasters calling me that need assistance, that's been postmasters 20, 30 years. But I find out that they don't know any more than I know. So I've got all kind of books, and I know people to where I can network. And I think the most important thing I did with them was I was honest. "Hey, I don't know the answer, but you give me 24 hours and I'll have the answer for you." So I started digging and this, that, and the other, and if I couldn't get the answer, I'd call them back and say, "Hey, I need a few more hours." So I established a rapport with them, a reputation of being honest and fair. And I took care of them and they took care of me.
Good.
But the thing that I learned from that episode was never sell yourself short. And I think of all of my experiences in the post office, that was the eye-opener, because we would go places. We did the hiring and firing. And we'd go, I worked with a guy out of Corbin, Kentucky, and we'd go way back up in eastern Kentucky. Fire people for stealing this, that, and the other. We had a government vehicle, and they thought we were revenuers. And McQuarrie County, I went to a place, and I'm walking through marijuana to get to the trailer. Wow. And the old man in front of me is talking about, "I want you to see my garden." Well, I'm thinking it's this garden, but it's a real garden. Right. But you know, all those experiences that I had, but like I say, I built up a good reputation about being honest. And you know, when you're in a situation where you can promote someone and they may get a raise of $40,000-$50,000 a year, that's a lot of power.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, the game was played basically like people that are being exposed now for sexual favors and this, that, and the other. You know, you promoted folks. But with my wife and 3 girls at home, I made a promise to God and to myself and my family I'd never do that. And I never did. And while doing that, we belonged to Davis Chapel AME, which is up above the Dairy Queen, right there next to the telephone company. We started cooking. This is how our cooking came about. Didn't have a lot of members, but my wife and I started cooking once a year for them, and we would buy the food, and all the proceeds from what we did, we gave to the church. And through a period of maybe 5 or 6 years, we got a new pastor, and she didn't like the way we did it. So we stopped doing it that way, and we started doing it on our own, but we would still give money to the church. So a lady that was over the tourism bureau, a lot younger than I, she died of cancer probably 10, 12 years ago. She wanted us to cook for an event here in Somerset, and we started. That's the way we got started. And we always took pride in what we did. And you know, you all have been in places where you've had the food and you think to yourself, well, there's no love in this food.
Right.
Well, what we did with everything we prepared, we put our heart and soul in it. And we started getting a reputation, and we were all over Kentucky. I remember we cooked for 1,500, 2,000 people in Danville. That was our first big catering job.
Dang.
I would say big.
It rained. We were in mud up to our knees. And people were lined up. And, you know, we made good money, but it was a heck of an experience. And from there, we would go to the Apple Festival every year in Liberty and so forth and so on. And like I say, we built up a following and started doing stuff for Relay for Life and, you know, things like that. And when I retired from the post office, we were making, the money was so lucrative catering that I talked to my wife, Nellie, and I said, we're going to back off the catering because I'm getting my priorities mixed up. My annuity is from the post office. And this quick and easy money, it isn't a top priority. So we backed off of catering to where I could focus on my postal career. And when I retired in 2004, we opened a restaurant where Raymond's Bakery is. In September of 2004, I retired April the 10th of 2004. Spent 34 years with the Postal Service. And we opened a restaurant. And from day one, my wife told me, said, we need to have a drive-through. Oh no, I want to come in and sit down and, you know, listen to my jazz and this, that.
Yeah.
Man, it made a prisoner out of us. I mean, a prisoner. When you put hours on the door, I'd go in about 4 o'clock in the morning. The most important thing is we invested in a cooker, an old hickory. It was about 8 feet tall, about 10 feet deep, wide and deep. We could do about 150 racks of ribs, about 100 chickens, and you know, and it had 4 levels, and it was a rotisserie. Got it out of Cape Girardeau, Illinois. Spent $13,000-14,000 for it. It retailed for $24,000, but I went up and got it, and they cut me a deal. First day we were open, we paid that off.
Dang.
Nice.
I mean, we had people standing in the parking lot. Had people calling, well, do we need reservations? And But the thing about it was we had built our reputation through years of catering. And the only complaint that we ever got out of that place was, hey, you're giving us too much food. We wanted people to get their money's worth. And basically that's how we went from the post office to, catering.
Wow.
To the business.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We killed my questions on the phone. I have to apologize because I have to get back.
No problem.
Go back and forth. But that's an awesome story. And it's just a testament to your loyalty, to your faith. And, there's been a test, and it's like he inadvertently, I don't know if he meant to test you, but it was a test and you passed it with flying colors. Yeah. Because anyone else would have just jumped on the chance to talk bad about someone else, but you didn't.
Yeah. Well, the thing about this community, I'll be 73 in April. The community has always been, I used to tell people that, hey, Somerset Pulaski County is heaven and you don't have to die to get here. We have our problems and whatnot. But God always put people in my path or in my family's path to make the road smoother. When I was going to school here, First Baptist Church on Main Street, I went to school with Pastor Eldred M. Taylor's daughter. We graduated Somerset High together in '67. And he saw that we were struggling. And he came to me and he said, Johnny, he said, you want a job as a custodian at First Baptist Church? And I told him, I said, I'm in school. And he said, well, we're going to let you come in and get your 40 hours in anytime you can. And until I went in the service, that's what I did. On Wednesday nights, they would always have prayer meeting, and I helped the cook, who was an uncle of mine, but everything that was left over, they'd let us take home.
Oh, awesome.
And it was a big help. And, you don't forget things like that, but this community has always done that, not only for me, but for a lot of folks. The lady that was the CEO down here, I don't know whether that's the proper word, but I was on the board when we hired Dr. Marshall. And I remember asking her a question, and after it was over, she said, you asked me a hard question. And what I asked her, I said, I want to get your commitment to when you come here, you're going to knuckle down and really make us shine. I said, you can't come here to retire, just to sit on your haunches and retire.
That's good.
And she did a fantastic job. I tell people, still tell them right now, Somerset Community College is the best kept secret in Pulaski County.
I'm a testament to that because I moved here.
Yeah.
I'm retired, I moved here.
Yeah.
Testimony to that. I definitely want to ask you, as far as, what advice would you give to young people, young students that look like us, and in general, as far as wanting to set out on their own and start their own business?
When we did it, and this is part of the advice, I took an entrepreneur class at the Center for Rural Development.
Okay.
I took it and it was online. I think they were teaching it out of Hazard. But I took it when I got through with it. My daughter took it. Our son in Chicago got a scholarship to go to DePaul University, and it was in an entrepreneur course. So he got a certificate in that. So really, everybody, when you go into business, your mother's recipe, your mom's recipe, everybody thinks, just because I've got a good recipe and my food is good, that's what everybody thinks.
That's right. That's right.
So you have to do your research from every aspect as to what percentage of your gross income you're spending on the product, which back in the day you couldn't spend over 31 cents and be profitable. Then you have to figure out what you're paying your employees, which is the biggest thing. You have to have insurance, which was a surprise. And Lord have mercy, don't you short Uncle Sugar. Uncle Sam wants his.
Right.
Had a farm, it's called a 914 employee withholding tax. In business, at the turn, after 2 o'clock every day, a new day turns over. You have to have that turned in by the 15th. Well, I run my mouth. I'm sitting at Citizens Bank running my mouth and didn't turn the form in, and it's past 2 o'clock.
Oh, no.
I'm in the restaurant about 5 o'clock that next morning, and the phone rings, and it's a lady out of Corbin, Kentucky with the IRS.
Ooh.
And she said, Mr. Perkins, we don't have your employee tax form. And I said, oh, yes, ma'am, I turned them in yesterday. She said, no, you didn't. And then my mind started clicking. I'd let that day turn over. She told me, she said, don't let it happen again. And she slammed the phone down.
Yikes.
I called my accountant. And he laughs and he says, let me handle that. But what we did before we opened the business, I had an ex-sister-in-law that was over the IRS out of Cincinnati.
Oh.
Had her come in and spend a day with me before we opened. And she told me exactly what we needed, and she made a statement I've never forgotten. She said, Johnny, you don't want us messing with you or any business. She said, the IRS, we don't have any checks and balances. She said, we can come in and do whatever we want to your business.
How about that?
And she was right. We never got in trouble.
Oh, good.
But I had a friend in Louisville that had a small business. He was a small business person of the year in Louisville. Messed around, didn't pay Uncle Sam. The next year he was bankrupt. They took everything he had. So the advice I would give folks, do your research. You have to have a good relationship with a financial institution or money in reserve. You have to realize that rather than going in and the money that you make is yours, because you've got to pay your mortgage or rent or lease. You've got to pay your employees. You've got to buy your product. And that insurance will kick you in the butt. So there's a lot of stuff. The small business administration and stuff, that's who you go to get guidance and stuff. The most important thing about being in business is the relationship you have with your customers and the consistency of your product. With social media now, there's different ways to market your product. But if you don't market it the right way and this, that, and the other, most small businesses, if you last longer than a year, you're rolling. And if you drive up and down the road, 75 or 27, between here and Lexington, you can probably count the moms and pops on one hand. You don't see them. You'll see these convenience stores and this, that, and the other, but you do not see the moms and pops. And the reason being is with Walmart and the big box stores, you can't compete price-wise. But get you an accountant, have you an attorney, because there's a lot of things. I remember we rented some mats with our logo on it from a company. I won't name the company. But the driver that was delivering our mats, she was going through a divorce, having problems. Sometimes she'd show up, sometimes she wouldn't. I fired her. We don't want your business anymore. When I talked to my attorney, because they called me back and said, well, hey, we're going to sue you. She said, Johnny, she said, on the back of that contract in small print is a statement that the only way that you can get out of doing business with them is through one of their supervisors. So I cost my business $1,200 because that's what we had to pay to get out of it. And in the beginning, they wanted $10,000. So you have to have legal advice. And whoever is heading up your business, whether it be you, your wife, or whoever, they have to have a cool head. They have to know how to interact with people. They have to have good people skills. And the most important thing is that when they don't know all the ins and outs, they have to have enough about them to where they say, hey, I don't know, we need help. A lot of businesses go down because the man or the woman running them will not admit that, hey, I'm in over my head. And all it takes is a bad week. With us, I always told my people, one bad sandwich will ruin you. Had a guy out on 27 selling sandwiches and ribs, telling them that he was my son.
Wow.
We were selling a rack of ribs back then for $12. He was charging $28, $29.
Oh my gosh.
Good man.
And I had to get my attorney, send him a certified letter to cease and desist. But it's things like that. But another important thing is when one door closes, another one opens. If you look like us, you're going to have a whole bunch of doors closed in your face. And the reason being is that the people in power with money, they don't look like us. And they're going to hire people that look like them 9 times out. And that's a general statement. There's some good folks out there. We wouldn't be where we are now, not that we're at the top of the mountain, if it weren't for good folks, black and white. And in my postal career, I never would have gotten away from unloading trucks if it hadn't been for good white folks, because it wasn't any of us. You know, I was the only one out of I don't know how many offices for a long time. But the thing about that is when you get into business, you can't politicize it. You cannot turn people away because of the way they look. We were in that restaurant for 4 or 5 years, and I took one bad check. And the bad check that I took, I knew it was bad. Lady came in, had 2 little kids, and she was fidgety, and she just kept looking. And I told my daughter, asked her what she wants, and she was hesitant. And she said, well, all I have is a check. And I told Kathy, I said, take the check. But I knew it was bad. But I wasn't going to let those kids walk out of there hungry. And so you have to have empathy for people. You have to treat people fairly. I'm old school. You know, it used to be, man, if you came in and you had an earring in your nose or but times have changed. So you have to adapt to that. But the most important thing I can say is be persistent. Don't take no for an answer. And you have to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
You'll get burned, but I would rather get burned that way than not giving them the opportunity.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
I hope
consistency.
I answered your
Oh,
question.
absolutely, 1,000%. So, in that, what would you say your quote-unquote secret sauce or secret to success is?
Secret to success is making sure that your word is your bond. If you tell someone that you're going to do something, you do it. If you can't do it, you get back to them and tell them why. Always take pride in what you do. When we had our restaurant, and I would, cuss my wife under my breath, we would clean it before we opened. Our hours were from 11 to 7. Most nights we didn't get out of there until 9:30 because we were mopping, we were cleaning everything. So you have to take care of the physical plant. You have to make sure that you get quality product at the cheapest price, and you have to be persistent. If you aren't persistent, and if you don't have a good work ethic, and if you sully your reputation, you might as well just quit. You know, how many times have you all been in a restaurant or somewhere and you've gotten a bad sandwich or the food hasn't been right, and in your mind, the first thing in your mind, I won't be back. You know, so whatever you're doing, I don't care if it's an electrician or whatnot, you always put your best foot forward. If somebody would come in, which thank the good Lord we've never had it happen, and say, hey, I don't like your food, I didn't like your food, or I got a bad piece, or whatever. You don't argue with them. You take that, put it in the trash, and you give them some more. And I've seen it at Kentucky Fried. I've done it at Kentucky Fried to where I didn't like the product. But rather than standing out in the lobby raising Cain, quietly messing your supervisor, and he or she'll come out and I'll say, hey, something's wrong with this product. You know, well, can I replace it? And, you know, if I'm in that mind, well, yeah, you can replace it, or do you want your money back? But I never try to make a scene as the proprietor because the customer's always right. And it's hard sometimes. I mean, it's hard. So you have to do that, and then you have to have the person that's going to do the hard work, the firing and the unpleasant stuff. good cop, bad cop.
Right.
And I think the most important thing is you give people second and third chances. Everybody's gonna make a mistake.
70 times 7.
Yeah. So you treat people the way you want to be treated, the golden rule, and you can't go wrong. But always have a backup plan. Don't go in there and spend everything you have on opening up a motorcycle shop or whatever. You have a backup plan, and especially if you're married and got responsibilities, you think about your family first. You know, you may have a dream, but your dream may not be theirs. So if he or she says, well, hey, I'm going to ride with you on this dream, you don't leave them high and dry if the dream goes bad. And that's what we as people do. We want to put all of our eggs in one basket. You can't do that. You know, most companies don't start seeing a profit for a few years. But what a lot of young folks do, and older folks, when they initially open, that money comes flowing in. And rather than banking it or investing it to where they can get to it, they're spending on stuff they don't need. New equipment, new furniture, this, that, and the other. And then, like with the COVID, these businesses that were flourishing before COVID, every one of them needs a pat on the back if they're still standing.
Yes, sir.
And the other thing that you have to have is you have to be able to adapt.
Absolutely.
You know, when they had the mask mandate or you couldn't come in and eat. If you ride them down 27, look at these convenience stores and stuff. They may not look pretty, but they built drive-throughs to where they can accommodate whatever. Each other. So, man, I'm long-winded, so y'all cut me
No,
off.
you are all good. Let it all out.
Any parting words of wisdom?
What I would say to all of you young folks, and you included, take advantage of the opportunity that you have here at Somerset Community College. Take the opportunity of being able to live, and he can attest to this, in a country to where you have the freedoms that we have. And the most important thing is, if I don't look like you, or you don't look like me, or you believe in something that I don't believe in, then that's part of being American. We have to respect each other's ideas and stuff. And you know, it says United States of America. Right now we aren't united because everything is politicized.
Oh, yes, sir.
And it shouldn't be politicized, because if I'm elected to Congress or whatever, then I should represent my constituents to the best of my ability, regardless of whether I'm Democrat or Republican. But what most politicians do now, the day after I'm elected, I'm running for re-election. And so we forget about what America's about. It's about taking care of each other. So the only wisdom that I can give you is that make sure before you become an entrepreneur is that you know what you're getting into. Research, research, research. And if you're going to open, per se, a restaurant or whatever, you go around and you talk to people that's been in the business for 15, 20 years and pick their brains and stuff. You know, don't go in and Googling this, that, and the other, and you find out for yourself. Because what a lot of people have done during this pandemic, they've lost their life savings. I had a friend that lost the security of his kids, of his kids' kids, and of his kids' kids' kids. And I'm talking about not no million or 2 or 3 million, I'm talking about almost $100 million. And what it was a bad business decision. And this was before COVID hit. So, you know, whatever you do, you aren't doing it by yourself. You've got somebody sacrificing to get you where you are. And above all, young lady, you be a man or a woman about what you're doing. Be somebody that your parents and your grandparents and everybody can be proud of. And that doesn't mean being successful. It means being honest and being a good person. And that's the wisdom that I would leave with you. But my wife is the president and CEO of Johnny B's. She's the boss. I'm the mouthpiece. Our son in Chicago does all the technical work, makes all the commercials and stuff. He said that Kroger was on our page 4 times yesterday.
Dang.
And at one time we were in all the Kroger, the Liquor Barns and Myers in Kentucky. But because the middleman was killing me, I took it out. Everybody was making money but us.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in about 400 stores in Illinois right now. And we're working to get in some stores in Kentucky. But man, it's a hard sell here in Kentucky. But you know the good thing about it? We grew up with nothing, and we aren't going to have anything when we leave this world, but we're going to give it a shot. We're trying to build a legacy, not for our kids, but for our grandkids and their kids and their kids.
There you go.
And so that's what it's all about. But I'll close by saying I have much love for Somerset Community College. I took printing when I got out of the service over here, and I spent a year and a half at the college. And it's near and dear to my heart, and it's good to see people like you all. And Somerset Community College has always supported the community, always. So I really appreciate the opportunity to come. And when your students, whoever sees it, just apologize for me, tell them that I'm a long-winded old man.
Yeah, I'm just honored that you take your time. And I know that, this would be a wonderful conversation. I'm glad I got to you, so it took me so long to get to you, but
no problem.
I'm glad.
And I just want to say, out of all this, from everything I've taken in, you've said, the one biggest thing I say I've learned is that you're just a good, honest, respectable man. And I think many others, myself included, need to take a page out of your book. And it's like you said earlier, we just need to treat others how we want to be treated, and just not make things about money, politics, beliefs, race differences, any sort of difference at all. Because when it comes down to it, we're all humans living on this one big dirt ball.
You're right.
And so we might as well be nice to one another,
And it doesn't cost anything to be kind.
Exactly.
Nothing. I was in the store this morning, and this guy looked like he was a construction worker, but people were lined up to the door, a lady and some kids. And he was there first, and he opened the door and held it and let everybody in. And I told him, I said, somebody raised their son right? He said, yeah, I'm house trained. That's what, little stuff like that makes an impression.
Mm-hmm.
And, but a lot of who I am is my mom and dad and my grandparents. And the people that saw something in me when I didn't see anything in myself.
Come on.
And you've been in the service, and it's good times and bad times. But when I came out of Vietnam for 20, 25 years, I did everything I was big enough to do, knowing it was wrong.
Right.
And thank God I had a good wife that raised our kids and stuff. And when I got ready to retire when I was 55 in 2004, one of my worst employees that had been to Nam, he said, Mr. Perkins, you need to go to the VA. Went to the VA, saw a shrink. His name was Ivan. And he told me about myself. It was like he'd been in my pocket. I broke down and cried. First thing out of his mouth was, Mr. Perkins, do you think you deserve to be here? And I broke down and cried, and the reason being is that I left a lot of friends and stuff over there. Most of them got killed. I left 6 close friends that didn't get on that Freedom Bird because Mama San had them hooked on heroin and cocaine. 3 of them had families, wife and kids here. So, when people say you were in war and you're lucky to be back, in a lot of instances, the lucky ones didn't come back. Because one day you're out there, kill or be killed. The next day you walk in the streets of your hometown and you're supposed to be normal. That don't work.
Nope.
Don't work. But they put me on medication back in '73 and I wouldn't take it. For any man to be on medication for depression or PTSD, the way I was raised, it's a sign of weakness. You don't do that. So I put that stuff in my pocket for 31 years, never took it. Because I didn't want to walk around slobbering and not being able to function. 31 years later, they put me on the same stuff with, it had been, I guess, changed a little bit to where you weren't in a fog all the time. But it allows me to function every day. The people that you see out here homeless, my age, his age, and whatnot, a lot of them are veterans that have mental problems, and you can't help them because a lot of them don't want help. You can find them shelter, but a lot of them don't want to be in that shelter and stuff. So I'm saying all that to say this: we all should have empathy for that homeless person, boy, girl, man, woman, or whatever, because most of them are dealing with problems. Just like with me and a lot of folks like me, if you don't get help, you know, you're in a dark place. And, you know, I used to be ashamed of medication, but the VA, anybody says anything negative about the VA, they don't know the VA that I know. And it really helps folks like me. So most people that speak in that rhetoric and stuff, they don't know the price of freedom. You do. So, you know, you can't. Had a little girl interview me for PTSD, 26 years old. After about 15 minutes, she said, "Mr. Perkins, you don't have PTSD." She said, "You've got depression." And I looked at her and I said, "Young lady, you ever been to war?" And she said, "No." I said, "Well, you get somebody out here that has been, that can identify with me, because you can't read books and tell me how I feel." Wow. And basically, you never know until you walk in somebody else's shoes. So these people out here that's raggedy, bumming, smelly, this, that, and the other, have empathy for them, because most of them's got problems. Hey, 2 or 3 paychecks missing, it could be us. So, but anyway, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
For more information on SCC student newspaper, The Bridge, or the Gateway Video Podcast, email us at sccthebridge@yahoo.com or contact one of the course advisors.
This is the Gateway, signing out.